Alright, it's time to rank another soundtrack, and this time we're continuing the Mega Man series with Mega Man 11. As usual, I'll just be doing the stage themes, so no title theme, no boss theme, no end credits, etc. So in this case, there'll be 8 Robot Masters and 1 Dr. Wily stage. There was only one for all 4 Gear Fortress stages, so a total of 9. I'll preface this like I always do, with the disclaimer that this list is just my opinion. It means nothing more or less than your opinion. So feel free to give your opinion. I encourage discussion and debate. So without any further ado, let's get on with the list. Number 9, Bounce Man. Bounce Man's song kind of reminds me of Clown Man in the vein of it being a cartoony, vibrant atmosphere. It also sounds kind of like a carnival game type of deal. But Bounce Man's song isn't quite as boring. It has a little more dynamic to it than Clown Man's. That being said, it's still ranked at the bottom of this particular list. It just sounds too much like a bonus level or an item shop, especially during the intro part. The song itself does have some kick to it, but it's a little bit too happy for my taste. Number 8, Blast Man. It's pretty much just generic riffs all the way throughout. The first, I guess, half of the song, it sounds like whoever's playing it is just trying to figure out a riff. They're just noodling around until they find something, and then they just kept that and stuck it in as the first half of the song. Then it kind of kicks into high gear, and then we've got a little bit of something going on. But even then, the riffs are just pretty generic and plain all throughout. I do kind of like the end, right before it loops back into the main riff. But even then, it's really nothing spectacular. Number 7, Gear Fortress stage. The one and only Wily stage isn't a particularly memorable one. Fortress songs in Mega Man usually have at least one song per game that has a bit of a grandiose, epic feel to it. There's none of that here. It's just some pretty straightforward, by-the-numbers riffs. It's nothing bad per se, but nothing noteworthy either. Generic stuff, just kind of like Blast Man's. The breakdown is pretty good. But nothing really stands out. Number 6, Torch Man. The intro has a dark, sinister feel to it. Very deliberate. It abandons that mood immediately and gets all up-tempo and cheerful. I like contrast and all that, but this doesn't mesh well, and it didn't transition right either. Although I will say that the transition back into the intro flowed a lot better. I just feel like this one was cobbled together, and I felt conflicted with the mood of it all. Like, what am I listening to here? Number 5, Tundra Man. I like the wind effects that they use throughout. It gives it that cold feel. And I like the middle section where it slows down and starts building it back up again to the end section. But it's otherwise a pretty boring affair. There's lots of energy, but none of the parts, other than that middle section, do much of anything for me. Number 4, Impact Man. I would have expected something a little heavier with the name Impact Man, but I do like the industrial-ish percussion that's used during the intro and the main verse, which, for my money, is the most memorable section. The rest of it is quite dull. So, it is what it is. It's nothing particularly great, but it does have a tendency to make you kind of bob your head in rhythm to the song. It has a little bit of an impact. Number 3, Acid Man. I love the intro to this one. It's creepy and has a lot of weird-ass accents that fill up every gap, and it has a really cool, warm synth bass. But it just abruptly goes into this plain and generic middle section. The end is cool and flows perfectly back into the intro. You don't even realize you're back at the beginning, it's that seamless. But the middle section is just out of place. It's not like every song on the soundtrack needed to be up-tempo or have an up-tempo section. This song could have been so much better without it, and it would have stood out and had its own identity. But that being said, it does have enough of its own to stand out in its own way, and those good parts do outweigh the bad. Number 2, Blockman. Blockman's song has a nice, groovy little intro, and it doesn't build up into anything. It's just bam, right into the main riff, and the main riff sounds like a refrain more than it does a verse riff, so it's kind of like you might make the argument that they're rushing into it, but it's a catchy riff nonetheless. I'm not a big fan of the pulsing kick drum throughout. Like in many of these songs, I wish the percussion would pick up instead of just throwing in the little splashes of snare shots. There is snare in one part, but it's buried in the mix, and I think that this song could have definitely benefited from having more snare. But I do like the percussion during the intro, and just about every section is hooky and memorable. In fact, like every section besides the intro sounds like it could be the refrain or climax. Good stuff. Number 1, Fuse Man. I really like how the drum pattern mimics the riff during the intro. It gives it a little bit of an odd timing, which is refreshing in a soundtrack that's very straightforward and synthetic and manufactured. I like how it slows down in the middle section and then picks back up again for the big climax. The song was constructed well. It has more dynamics than most of the soundtrack, and the long drawn-out pad synth in the background is really cool. I wish it was more out front in the mix, but I do like that it's there. Altogether, besides that little mixing gripe, Fuse Man's the one song on the soundtrack that I wouldn't change at all. So that is my list for Mega Man 11. Just a quick recap. Number 9 was Bounce Man. Number 8, Blast Man. Number 7, Gear Fortress. Number 6, Torch Man. Number 5, Tundra Man. Number 4, Impact Man. Number 3, Acid Man. Number 2, Blockman. And number 1, Fuse Man. So that's my list. What do you think of the list? What do you have for your own list? And what did you think of the soundtrack in general? So that'll wrap it up for this soundtrack rankings, and I'll see you next time.